Holy City Center Radio. It is episode 94, and I am your host, Christian Sanger. Today is Wednesday, March 8th, 2023, and I've got time today. Well, not unlimited time. You know, I can only do a show for so long, and my producer, Lindsay Marie Collins, who I thank every episode, she doesn't have all the time in the world. But I've got time for the trolls and troll-adjacent folks on the Twitter machines. For whatever reason, there's been a handful, probably because there's things in the news that are divisive, and I can always expect some negative comments. I don't care about negative comments for the most part, but when we're talking about certain political issues that I really believe in, and people are making up nonsense, it's just so hard to bite my tongue sometimes. And I know I should, but I haven't been. So if you want some entertainment, you can go look at my timeline. There's been some really dumb comments coming my way about legislation and all sorts of things, and then me arguing back. But if you're not into the petty and the drama, I don't blame you. But I got time for the trolls. At least I have had time. But some days I need a break. In any event, forget the trolls and all that. We've got some things to talk about. First of all, today is March 8th. It is the last day to vote for Best of Charleston 2023 in the Charleston City paper. They did say voting is open through March 8th. So, unless I misread that and voting actually ended last night at midnight, you should be good to go. One last day to vote. Please go vote for as many categories as you can. You don't have to hit a certain amount. If you just vote one category, it'll still count towards that person or business. So if you have someone you really want to, give a little boost to, please go do that. But, if you have some time, I also would appreciate your votes for Holy City Center in any of the following categories: Twitter, website, Instagram, social media influencer. And that will be the last time you hear me discuss voting on this podcast. I appreciate you. I know it's probably annoying to some of you, if not all of you. But this is the closest thing to feeling important with like a Grammy award or an Emmy or something. This is the Emmys and Grammys of Charleston, so it's always exciting to be part of it, and I appreciate your votes and support over the years. All right, let's get into some news. You know what? I've come out on fire. I'm coming in a little hot today, so let's go ahead and just jump into the category that, although there's been a few over the weekend and over the days, this is the one that's making me a little angry today. So there is a restrictive drag queen bill that has been introduced to South Carolina lawmakers. We've got a few details on it here. And I will say Republicans do a great job at branding, whether it is names of bills or when, they make up nicknames for people, or, you know, they want to make a shortcut word to mean something, like, for instance, they completely stole the word woke and made it this negative thing. So now when they say it, that means a million things to their viewers, their voters, whatever we're talking about. They're brilliant with that stuff. They do a great job with it. So when you hear this bill title, you're going to think, how could this be misconstrued at all? There's a bill that's called the Defense of Children's Innocent Act. See what I mean? Who wouldn't want to defend children's innocence? And that's part of the game here, which we're going to get into. It's the wording things in a certain way, still accomplishing the goal that is being set out, and making sure that if anybody opposes it, you can accuse them of being something ridiculous. So, Defense of Children's Innocent Act. If passed, the bill prohibits children from attending a drag show, a drag show that is considered explicit. Again, okay, yeah, that makes sense, right? I mean, when you first heard this was a drag bill, you probably were like me when you read the headline. You're like, oh, here we go. And you're like probably thinking right now, if that's it, the bill prohibits children from attending a drag show that is considered explicit. Yeah, by all means. Again, this all seems fairly reasonable right now. You wouldn't want your child to go to an explicit show of any kind. So it's not the specific drag queen thing. So yeah, again, so far so good. We'll go over some more details and then we'll talk about the rest. This bill would also deem any business that holds any kind of drag show that is considered explicit. That means that business will be considered a, quote, sexually oriented business. Okay. So you hold one drag show a week, a month, whatever it is. and it's explicit in nature, now you're labeled as a sexually oriented business. Seems a little bizarre, but okay. Anderson County House Representative Thomas Beach is the one who created this bill and claims it's just all about protecting children. He said the bill doesn't ban drag shows, rather, it just keeps kids from seeing a performance that contains nudity or explicit behavior. And he says, if you have a child and it's sexual in nature, then you've broken the law. If you've taken a child to that show, the parents would be in trouble, and I'm guessing the business would be as well for allowing a child to come in when there's an explicit show going on. According to the bill, a drag show is intended to provide sexual stimulation or sexual gratification. Of course, that is not true. I mean, maybe for some it does do that, but that's not the intent. The intent is to entertain. Um, but okay, whatever. Um, So in this article, this specific one, ABC actually reached out to a drag queen to get some feedback from someone this directly affects. And Daniel Sellers is the name. He said that there's nothing sexual about the shows that they put on at their location on Pawleys Island. It's called Local Eat, Drink, Celebrate. He said they don't sexualize it. They don't do anything that's sexual in nature. He thinks that the people that are introducing the bills are sexualizing it. He also said that he thinks some lawmakers just aren't really educated on these topics, and that's why they're confused. He talks about that there are shows that they have drag queens who are just dressed up in beautiful ball gowns. They sing, they dance. Um, but he's afraid, by definition of what they have in this bill, they don't think that he's pretty sure these people haven't been to a drag show because, like he said, not all drag shows are sexually explicit. So ABC asked Representative Beach if he's actually even seen a drag show, and he said no, and he doesn't plan on it. He doesn't feel he needs to go to a drag queen show to make legislation about drag queens. Unsurprisingly, the bill has gotten support from other representatives in the Republican Party. No big shock there. If passed, anyone who violates the bill is guilty of a felony and can be imprisoned for up to 10 years and fined $5,000. So here's where we start to dive into it a little bit. So again, yeah, obviously on the surface, this sounds reasonable, at least the beginning parts of it. And even the person they spoke to who said, well, our shows don't have anything even remotely sexual. Well, what the representative would say is great. He can keep his show. It's not sexual in nature. This is only about anything that's explicit and keeping kids away from it. And again, that makes sense. If you take the fact it's drag queen and you just say, oh, they don't want kids to be able to go to a show that's sexually explicit, that makes sense. Like, kids aren't allowed at like Chip and Dale's shows, I'm sure. I mean, I don't know that for a fact, but I'm guessing because they strip. Kids aren't allowed in strip clubs, speaking of. If there was still video stores that had the adult section, kids aren't allowed in there. That makes sense. Kids can't purchase pornography legally. That all makes sense. So again, you're like, oh, okay, all right, I get that, But putting aside the whole fact that the representative hadn't even been to a show, so he doesn't even know what they're like, and the fact that anyone could just claim a show is sexual and then it could lead to people having to go to court and pay fines or be and be charged with a felony. It's going to be, some shows could become a he said she said. Someone could say, oh, well, they did this dance move and that's sexual in nature to me. And who knows what a jury or a judge, or who knows what would happen, if police or whoever is going to be responsible for having to go to these drag shows to see about sexual complaints, what they'll decide. And then all of a sudden someone could be facing a felony with a punishment of up to 10 years in jail and fined $5,000 because one person found something slightly objectionable. So where's the line? So that's worrisome there. Something like that kind of thing seems like it's up to interpretation in some instances. Is a show with just singing and dancing, but one little dance move makes someone uncomfortable? You know what I mean? It's ridiculous. But okay, again, maybe I'm overreacting. Let's just keep it to the very clear. Like, obviously, there are different types of shows. It should be clear which ones are explicit. And again, all of this sounds reasonable. And you'll see people on social media rolling their eyes. or saying this is ridiculous. We've got bigger things to worry about, and all of that is true. This, as far as I'm aware, I haven't seen any reports. I haven't heard any complaints in town. I First of all, I haven't heard of any overly sexually explicit drag shows. Period. But fine, if there are any out there, they're not going to be anywhere where kids are going to be. Businesses wouldn't do that. They wouldn't any show at all that is sexually explicit. Again, not specific to drag queens. It would be no different. They wouldn't want kids there. It's going to be like at a bar where you have to be 21 to be in there. Drag shows that I've heard about at like brunches and things. I haven't been to a drag brunch, but from my understanding, unless it's at a place where you have to be 21 or older to be in there, because it's a bar of some kind. If it's like a brewery where kids and families can go, that they're pretty tame. And so it's one of those, like, are we making legislation for a problem that doesn't exist? Okay, but even putting that aside, just because something doesn't exist, the potential of it, I get that. I can see that with other legislation. But here's the thing. This bill is disingenuous. This is not about protecting children. And I think we all know that. I think even supporters of it know that. They may think this is one way to protect children, so they support it. And again, on the surface, taking drag queens out of it, any sexually explicit show, yeah, okay, I could see there being a law or rule kids can't go. There's R-rated movies. Kids aren't supposed to go without a parent. We'll get to that without a parent thing in a minute. But there are some comedy shows that are 18 and over only. There are some concerts that have the same rule, but not all. I've seen shows that are all ages, um, at big venues with artists that do sexual things on stage. So we'll get to that too. But that's exactly why it's disingenuous. Over the last 2 years, what are the big, if you are a right wing person or know people on the right or pay attention to their media, what are some of the big things they're always freaking out about? It's guns, of course. They're coming to get our guns. CRT, which they've now morphed into just anything that mentions equity, equality, race. Oh, it's CRT. It's same. It's like CRT slash woke. Oh yeah, it's this, it's like the reverse racism. That's basically what they're saying without saying that, because they know it's a ridiculous term. That's the new reverse racism. Oh, this is a CRT policy, aka it's going to hurt white people and prop up non-white people that shouldn't be. That's what it's all code for, and their viewers all get that. So that's the other issues. And then LGBTQ has been the big freak out over the last few years. And yeah, I'm forgetting the virus and vaccines and all that too. But anyway, scared about it being in schools, worried that kids are being indoctrinated, that if they learn about gay people in school, they themselves will turn out gay because they're just dumb, impressionable kids, just not understanding how these things work. And make, just like with the CRT thing, like making up things that are being taught in school and all that other nonsense. This is just them conflating drag queens with trans people. Drag And of course, drag queens are part of queer culture. Not that straight people don't wildly enjoy it too, but that's what it's associated with. They're conflating, oh, men dressed up as women are trans, which is not the case. You know, uh, they're just conflating that. I'm convinced that's part of it. But even if they're not, they see this as part of LGBTQAI plus culture. And that's been a big, oh my God, the children, won't somebody think of the children? They're going to trick my kid into being a drag queen. They're going to trick my kid into being trans. They're going to trick my kid into being gay. They're going to indoctrinate them. All that panic. This is just part of that. And again, you look at the legislation, you're like, yeah, it is. But again, should kids be exposed to something that's explicit? So again, putting aside the fact that that seems incredibly vague and we're going to run into issues where something that's not sexually explicit at all is going to be claimed to be. I mean, you saw people freaking out about the Super Bowl halftime show. Go look up some of the complaints the FCC got, and some of them are talking about how outrageously sexual it was. And I'm not saying maybe there wasn't, I wasn't looking for something sexually explicit, and when I'm watching TV, I'm not watching it with children, so I'm not like, oh my god, So maybe I missed something, but I don't remember there being anything. But I get it. There could be some parents out there that find that objectionable. But my point is, a small vocal minority might find something sexually explicit that really isn't, and then who all these people could be facing felonies. So it's, but again, all right, let's just assume it works perfectly. Then what's the problem? The problem is it's a dog whistle. When you're going after one specific group for something that, if you're actually serious about the intent, there are many other things that you would be going after too. The reason they're not going after the other things is because it's not something that they're conflating with LGBTQAI plus culture. And if you oppose this as someone on the left, a liberal or progressive, or anybody, it doesn't matter. People on the right might oppose this. They don't oppose the part about kids shouldn't be exposed to sexually explicit material. They oppose that this bill is disingenuous, that it's pandering, and that it's only meant to be a dog whistle to their side, their base of voters, to number one, be excited that their politician is doing what they want them to do, but also kind of get this kind of legislation gives them permission to let out their bigotry. You know what I mean? Like, oh no, we're cheering the fact that the whole sexually explicit thing for children. We're not cheering because this puts down drag queens and this is a knock against the LGBTQ culture. You know what I mean? Like, it gives them that cover. Just like opposing CRT things that aren't actually CRT kind of gives cover to racism. You know, It- again, not everybody, but certain portions, that's part of what this is all about. They have cover under these terms, so they can't be called bigoted or racist or whatever it may be. But that's what's going on here. Because if this really truly was about protecting children from sexually explicit material, there would be other things in this bill. Any concert that comes into town that can be deemed sexually explicit. There are some musicians, artists that come and do shows, and they dance very explicitly. And I'm sure there's many parents who wouldn't want a certain age child or any age child to see some of these performances. Sometimes the material at comedy shows or music is sexually explicit. I just said I went to a show this weekend, Nikki Glazer, very sexually explicit. A lot of comedians are. Although there's no nudity, it didn't say in the bill that there had to be nudity. So why aren't we going after them? And yes, I know some concerts are 18 plus only, and some comedians have their shows that way, but not all. A child can go to a lot of these shows with a parent or by themselves if they're old enough to drive or what have you, or the parents drop them off. R-rated movies. Kids can't go in by themselves, but they can go in with a parent. What if you go into an R-rated movie and there's a sexually explicit sex scene in that with nudity, but it's the guy dressed as a woman? That's the sexually explicit problem that you need to protect your child from? So, those are just some examples off the top of my head. Strip clubs is already like you have to be 18 plus, so it doesn't fit into this mold. But the other ones, they're no different in, again, certain musicians, certain comedians, certain R rated movies. Why isn't that in the bill? Why isn't, hey, if a concert comes along that's deemed sexually explicit, children aren't allowed? With a parent or without, because that's the other part of this bill. It's not that parents can make that decision to bring their kids if they wanted to. They can't. It's illegal. And just like anybody out there is like, yeah, but who's going to bring their child to a drag show that's sexually explicit? Well, who brings their child to an R movie that's sexually explicit? What's the difference? And the difference, of course, is that this is involving drag queens, whereas typically in our movie, it's going to be a heterosexual couple that you're probably seeing on the screen. Not always, but that's the big difference. Our movies aren't part of the culture war right now. Maybe they'll find a way to spin it. Our movies are bad somehow, somewhere down the line. But yeah, woke Hollywood or something. Uh, but the culture war is this drag queen stuff. So that's it. That's why the bill is bad. It seems like common sense, and just because you think the bill is bad because it's disingenuous, because it's not attacking anything else that fits that same definition, it's because you see what's really going on here and you're saying this is BS. If you want to pass this, fine, but you're going to have to add other stuff to it, so you can't make this a drag queen scapegoat. That's why people are opposing it. But as I said, in the wording, because it says sexually explicit in nature, people who support this bill will turn around and be like, "Wow, the left, they really just want to expose kids to sexually explicit material. What's wrong with them?" That's why it is this way. They didn't include that other stuff for the reasons I mentioned, but also so when you try to call out this bill for what it is, they just go, "Well, all this bill really says is that kids shouldn't see sexually explicit material. So, yikes, you really want them to see that?" That's what it is. It's just an easy pushback that they can do. And that's exactly what you see going on. You can oppose legislation that makes sense on the bottom line for other reasons. Doesn't mean that you wouldn't support it in the end if other things were added to it to make it not so obvious what they're trying to do. If they're serious about protecting children, there would be other things included in this that children have access to. So don't let them, when you call them out on what this bill really is, furthering the culture war divide, further trying to get people to argue and all that other nonsense. The whole point is for that. For you to be like, hey, this seems kind of bigoted, and can we include some other stuff? If we're really serious about protecting children from this content. Oh, you oppose it? You must want kids to see sexually explicit content everywhere. What's wrong with you? That's the whole point of this. So don't fall for that either, and call them out on that. Like, I know what you're doing. I didn't say I oppose that part. I oppose how this bill is being presented and what it represents in reality. I will have a serious discussion with you about protecting kids from things that they need to be protected from, but it needs to be an all inclusive conversation. We're not going to pick off things one by one just because this is something you oppose in general. Because they oppose LGBTQ rights and in some instances them existing in general, this is a way for them to knock them down a peg in their mind. So that's what I'm fired up about today. And it pretty much took up the whole episode doing that. Hope it wasn't too much, but yeah, it annoys the crap out of me. So quickly to the news. Last little bit of Murdaugh news is going to keep trickling out, like I said. So I don't know how long it'll be before we have a Murdaugh-free episode, but this is not it. Some of the jurors went on TV and are giving interviews now, and I think that's interesting. I think a lot of people want to hear their perspective. 3 of them went on the Today Show. They're the ones, of course, made the biggest headlines, and they said that Alec didn't help his defense when he took the stand for his trial. Um, that was something the defense pushed for. They also mentioned going out to the property was something that they think really helped them hammer home that no, he did this. Also, one of the defense's ideas. So, 2 of their ideas, although Alec testifying may have been more of his idea, and the defense was just like, all right, we can't convince him otherwise. But from that side, jurors say we're part of the reason that they found him guilty. The other part that they say was that his testimony just confirmed what they were already thinking, which is that he easily lied to people, that he could turn his tears on and off at will. Um, that coupled with the video they said that Paul had on his cell phone that was shot just minutes before the killing and showed that Alec, that is, was there and lied about it. They were already leaning that way. And they say the testimony just really hammered it home that this guy was a liar, that he was clear he thought he was smarter than other people and was trying to charm the room, and they just didn't buy it. And I've seen other reports from jurors saying that, because they were in the courtroom, they could see better than we can see on TV and on the internet. But some of those instances on the stand when he was like crying and things, some of them said it didn't really seem like it was real. Didn't seem like tears actually ever came out. Um, so I thought that was interesting, hearing some of their feedback. I think a lot of this stuff is what we assumed, but not until you hear it directly from the jurors do you really know what they were thinking going into it. But very interesting to get official word on that. Let's end this episode with something fun. I was just told about a new event called the Battle on the Bricks. It's going to be a charity boxing match that raises money for the Medical University of South Carolina's Children's Hospital and the College of Charleston student athlete scholarships that they give out. I shouldn't say a scholarship. They have multiple scholarships, and some of the money raised will be going towards that fund. And this event's going to take place at the College of Charleston's TD Arena on April 6th. Tickets are available now. The event is going to feature 28 low country locals who are going to be competing in the ring for an evening of action packed entertainment. The boxers are true amateurs. They've been training since December for the competition, so these aren't pros by any means. It's a charity match. So even if you're kind of like, ooh, the boxing, this isn't like a real boxing match. This is just meant to be fun, give you that if you're in the arena, make it feel like a big time Vegas match. Some of their packages, when you read the ticket options like VIP and stuff, it sounds like something you would see if you were going to be purchasing tickets to a boxing match in Vegas. So again, for a charity, this isn't going to be some brutal blood spilling everywhere, people all bruised up type thing. Everyone's meant to be having fun and safe and all that good stuff. Um, Among some of the members who will be competing are people from the community that work in places like the Charleston Fire Department, Charleston Police Department. There's some veterans that are fighting, MUSC staff, and some local hospitality veterans as well. So a nice mix of people in the community and people that a lot of them do incredible work for us and or for our country. So that should be cool too to support them. You can go and buy tickets. You can also donate to different boxers, and they're turning this into a whole different event, a whole huge event for the city where there's different ways to donate. It's not just buying a ticket. People who maybe can't attend, like I said, can go online and donate to their favorite boxer. Maybe you know someone who's competing. So it just seems like something cool and different. We get a lot of the same events here in Charleston every year because some of them are amazing, and of course they should come back every year. But even sometimes when new events are announced, they just seem very similar to other ones we have, and some pan out, some don't. This is something new. I haven't heard about anything like this ever since I've lived here. Maybe, I'm sure there was something I've missed, but so I think it's cool, something different, something new. It's sports related, which I always like. It's downtown, which is always fun, and something different that's going to be raising money. So it sounded pretty cool to me. So go check that out. Battle on the Bricks. That's it for this episode. I hope you all enjoyed it. I know it was a long rant at the beginning. I know a lot of you tend to agree. So I may have been preaching to the choir there and angering the few people who already don't like me in my political stance and rants. But I hope you all didn't mind. Just something I've been dealing with comments online. I'm just like, this is so transparent. Like I just got to vent about it, and sometimes that's what the podcast turns into. So thank you to you for listening to any rants and letting me have therapy, as it were, with stuff going on in the world. And an even bigger thank you to Lindsay Marie Collins, who has to listen to it and edit it if it needs to be. So she's doing even more work than you guys are. And also to Tyler Boone, whose music is in each and every episode of this podcast. If you want to help out Holy City Center, number one, go vote in Best of Charleston, bestof.charlestoncitypaper.com. Today is the last day. You can also go to holycitycenter.com/shop to pick up merchandise. And finally, patreon.com/Holy City Center. Those are all great ways to support the podcast and website. You can also rate and review and, subscribe on whatever streaming platform you're listening on right now. All that helps out as well. I'm talking too much. I need to go. It's getting late, but I can't wait to talk to y'all again on Friday. Until then, good night and good luck.